speaker, you can see other people on your little grid, which is nice. So you don't have to see me all the time. But here's how I threw in all the questions or challenges that people are sharing and going together. So is there one that jumps out to anyone that they want to cover? I know Dave Jerry's been a great resource for our board group and other people, as far as, you know, they're an essential facility. So they've been, as some of you have, still been going strong at it. So I asked him to share some of his wisdom about what they're doing, what challenges they're still facing as people come back to work. So I guess what I'll do, Dave, let me throw it at you and just say wisdom to share. Some of your points were in on this list here, but big take home things of what have been your biggest challenges. And then, like, is there one that you faced that you have a great solution for to share with others?
Sure. So as I'm sure most of us are aware, this has been pretty interesting kind of experiment. And so it started with us in right around St. Patty's Day, but it kind of started earlier for us with our Chinese facilities. And so we were trying to source masks to send to them because they were short, and at the same time also starting to build our own internal supply with the expectation that it was going to jump borders and be here before we knew it anyways. So that kind of got us started even back in like late January, going into February, and even probably a little bit before that. As we started to look at it, you know, there was things happen really quickly. And so when we made the decision to kind of, or when the state made the decision to start the shelter in place process, we had already kind of self-started that, and it helped us move through it. Emerson is not a huge work from home organization. So that was one of the things that quickly changed, as well as our kind of leave policy and those type things. And then going forward, really, we got to a point where it's just the essential people in the facility now. Our instrument builders, a couple safety folks, and a couple operations people. And that's really it. Unless you need to be here, you're not here. We have not started to reintroduce folks to the site yet. The expectation is right now we developed a division-wide plan, and we're starting to look at metrics around how do we do that, as well as what are the health metrics telling us as far as, is it safe to start bringing people back? Because our biggest concern is, you know, kind of the gates get flooded and everybody opens up, and then we have another spike, and we impact the population that we don't want to impact, which would be our key kind of people that are out there doing the value-added work of building our sensors. So right now we're kind of waiting a little bit to see how this shakes out and how we go forward. But things we've put into place are, you know, social distancing. We're buying masks for our folks, face coverings. We had a good stockpile of both surgical masks and N95s. We've donated most of those to healthcare organizations, and we're going with the cloth face coverings for people right now. Am I right here? We've also done temperature screening. So we have a infrared scanner camera that kind of, if you've seen the ones they have in the airport, it's like those, right? People just walk by it. It reads their surface temperature. It builds kind of a database based on the environmental conditions. And then really what it does is it flags the outlier, right? because it's really looking at, it's not a body temperature, it's surface temperature of your face. So it's reading that. It's really high throughput. We don't have any lines, any waiting. People just walk in, take their glasses off and their face mask and hat. And as they walk by, I can tell basically if they flag hot anywhere, I'll get a little circle over where the hot spot is. Most of the time it's their coffee cup, right? But it's a really good tool that we've used, and we went that way. A, it costs a lot more, but B, we went that way because it gives us, we're able to social distance our screeners that way, so I don't have to put them in an N95 or do other kind of PPE or procedural things where they're not doing an exam of someone walking through the door, which is nice, right? We found that to be a very important thing. We've ordered 2 more of those cameras. Now we're just trying to figure out where we're going to put them and how we're going to staff them, right? That's been a really great tool. Other things we've done, we've increased cleaning, where we do some, it's monthly like disinfection of the site, especially key areas, right? So we're not doing the entire campus, but those areas where we have a high population of workforce, we're doing disinfection in addition to our kind of daily normal increased cleaning of surfaces and doorknobs and all that kind of stuff. As we bring people back, we're starting to look at, I don't know how many people saw that New York Times article that came out over the weekend of where it talks about time and exposure for contracting the virus. And they gave a reference of a restaurant where somebody was infected and they sat at a table and like 50% of the people downwind of the HVAC ended up contracting the virus because they were sitting in the same restaurant with the person that was contaminated. It's a really cool article. I see if I can pull up the link. It's kind of sobering. They have a few reference points, but really what it gets to is even in an indoor environment, or especially in an indoor environment, the 6 feet of social distancing kind of goes out the window, right? And a lot of people have brought up, well, what about the grocery store versus work and all that? And really, if it's that amount of time that you spend in that airspace, it's really kind of getting folks. So if you're in a shared, like a cube farm, and somebody has it and you're breathing the same air as they are all day, while you may not be getting a huge dose each breath over the course of the day, that dose seems to be what's getting folks sick. So the longer you're exposed to it and the more you're breathing, is how folks are kind of coming down with this. So with that in mind, we're really kind of starting to take a hard look at our return air and how we bring in more fresh air, but also we're looking at some devices it's like an ionizing something or other that actually gets built into the air handler and does some disinfection of the air as it passes through the air handler. We're still waiting on some information on that, but that's one of the things we're starting to look at as we start to transition folks back to the facility. Another thing we're doing is we're going to stagger it pretty significantly. Like right now, we haven't even started the meetings to bring folks back, but when we do, it's going to be a certain percentage, like a small percentage, 10% of whoever's working from home. And then there's going to be a pause, and we're going to wait a couple weeks before we bring the next batch in, just to make sure we don't see a spike or that those people that are coming back aren't bringing in additional risk or exposures. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of what we've done, but if people have questions or if we want to kind of go through some of those questions, we can. And I'd prefer open it up so it's not just me talking. And if folks have thoughts or concerns or I'm open to hearing them.
No, I think that's a great place to start. So anyone can just jump in and ask their questions. Please know that you can just use your space bar as your walkie-talkie if you don't know that already, or you can fully take yourself on mute, whatever you like.
Hey, Dave, so how many people are you guys, have your lawyers been helping you figure out how you guys are going to handle this? I mean, that's
Yeah.
our lawyers are the ones who are driving the process.
Yeah, so as kind of things come out of the Capitol, you know, usually gets a lawyer review, and we kind of talk through what that means and what the expectations are based on that. Like the mask covering, you know, we kind of, the face masks is, when they first came out, our stance was always, you know, if it makes you more comfortable, wear it. And if it doesn't add an additional risk, wear it. And we're encouraging folks to wear it, but we're not mandating it as long as social distancing is in place, right? Especially for our folks. And even at first, because we didn't want to, based on the shortage of masks, we really didn't want to start handing out masks right away. And as we all know, the N95 is a respirator, and we didn't want to go down that road anyways. So we did have surgicals as well. And we just made a decision up front where it was kind of, at first it was, if it makes you comfortable, you can wear a mask, do whatever you need to do. And then once the kind of Colorado edict came out of wearing a mask, again, where social distancing impacts, we're asking folks to put it on. But other than that, we're not forcing them to wear them. But we're getting decent coverage. I think as folks get used to them, and you know, right now we're looking at some different styles. Right now, the ones we have are the tie behind your head, and they're fairly comfortable, but folks are complaining of them steaming up their eyeglasses, you know, their safety glasses and some of that stuff. So we're looking at more of the ones that got the nose piece and a couple other things. We were able to source a fair amount of them locally right here in Niwot, from a charitable organization that we basically made a donation to, and they made masks for us. So it was kind of cool that we were able to do that within the community. And then we're also looking at a couple local companies for the next batch that we buy too. And right now we're going to give folks 2 or 3 every so often, right? And then they'll maintain them and get another reload when it's time.
Dave, I have a quick question for you, just because you're mentioning that I find it interesting that your first point of contact is the lawyers, right? And then this is maybe something that Kristen can chime in on. Is that because what's recommended versus what's required, like that kind of lingo? Is that why they are the first contact point?
Yeah, well, and I think it's more of a kind of I don't know that it's first, but everybody kind of gets the document and looks at it, and then we all have an opinion, and then it also goes through legal to get their kind of official, you know, what do you see in this versus what am I taking away from it, and then how do we kind of manage that, what's legally required, and then what's risk-based, and how do we want to manage that as well, right? Because sometimes it's, okay, we're going to do that, but we're also going to do, you know, we're going to do X, but we're also going to do X and Y, because that gives us a better kind of risk profile, or gets the risk to a level that we're willing to accept. So it's not necessarily first, but they're in the first batch of folks that are looking over anything that comes out of the governor's office or anything like that.
Dave, are you giving anything, any kind of documentation on how to care for these? I'm assuming they're cloth masks you're giving out?
Yeah, you know, we get kind of don and doff, and not so much documentation, but cleaning instructions on, throw them in the washer and wash them with hot water or hand wash them. We've had better luck with the hand washing on the ones that we bought than the washer or dryer seemed to shrink them. But yeah. The biggest feedback I got was we got a lot of floral prints, and I got a shop full of welders.
You want Denver Bronco, huh?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Let's get more Bronco print. But so we bought like a first batch of 200, and then the second batch of 500 that we bought, we got some more kind of neutral prints.
Kristen, did you have a statement? I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add. Yeah, I think, that's been a lot of the questions that we've been dealing with, from the beginning, especially once the new law started coming out on the paid sick leave. But yeah, lately it's been on the public health order, what's required, how do we take temperatures, what do we have to do? And there's it's hard because the Colorado Department of Public Health, they've got those best practices on their website, which is not entirely consistent with what's written in the public health order. So there's been some confusion there where the public health order, we read these things as requirements, and then they've relaxed it a little bit in their best practices and guidance. So a lot of, we've been given a lot of guidance on that. Still a lot of exposure questions of handling that. We're still, as we reopen, we expect that to ramp back up a little bit. That was really hot in March and early April with exposure questions. I don't know if you guys have seen on our Fisher Phillips, like the main webpage, we've put together like a back to business FAQ, which is to cover kind of, we try to look at it from an employment law standpoint. What issue might you encounter, and here's how we'd address it. So it's just on our main page, but it's been really helpful. I use it when we're advising people, but we tell clients, say, feel free to go there. You can, get it. And we try to look at it from, an HR standpoint, safety standpoint, wage and hour standpoint, because with temperature taking, are you paying people? Like Dave said, they don't have that issue because they're just walking right in with the infrared cameras. But if you're lining people up and taking temperatures, then now you've got to consider that issue. So, we've got immigration issues on there. I'm trying to think, it's a pretty big document. We tried to kind of go through and think about what all issues would you encounter as you reopen, or like, business like Dave's where you've been open, but the rules keep changing on how you have to operate. So that's on there, if people haven't seen that yet.
I like that. That sounds really great. Can you make sure you share the link in the chat box, and I'll make sure that I can post that as well as a resource. I went on recently to the Facebook page for our chapter and posted a couple things that other professionals were putting out there as well. So just trying to be helpful. I understand there's multiple resources now, but I think that's just from what I hear. If one source is saying one thing and one source is saying another, who you really listen to is what I'm hearing is some of the challenges from people. And I was on the construction specialty group call. I don't know if we have any construction people in here. I see Troy, but and Tammy's in here, but the call for their specialty group on last Wednesday or something like that, the temperature taking was a big thing. So maybe that'll be a great resource for them. And hearing that someone was saying that they can leave it to the employee to take their temperature at home and just let you know what it was. And as a self-employed person stuck at home, that's the part I don't envy of all of you. But yeah, hopefully those are good resources for everybody.
Has anybody had pushback from employees about I literally from this guy who's interesting to work with, saying that me asking for his health conditions, his daily temperature, and making him wear a mask is an invasion of his privacy, and that if he doesn't do this, is he going to get fired? And that puts my company then at risk, because I wasn't planning on firing anybody, but what do I do when I've got a crazy person?
We didn't get a lot of pushback, Pat. In fact, a lot of the feedback I got from our employees was they appreciated the extra level of caution, right? And that I was thankful for. Although we were prepared if we needed to. And a lot of it was, if you're not comfortable going through the screening, we're not going to hold it against you, but you're not coming in and you're not getting paid. Right? But your job will still be here maybe when it's done, but we weren't gonna, it's kind of, we put that in line with like the folks that may have a medical condition that makes it a higher risk for them to be in the workforce. They could self-select and not come into work if they chose. And then once they went through, you know, their time banks or whatever, then they wouldn't get fired or penalized, but they also weren't going to get, you know, the paycheck wasn't going to come in either. We weren't going to pay them for not being here. But that's kind of where we put the same folks that weren't comfortable with the screening. And I had read that like the ADA actually relaxed some regulations around screening because of COVID, right? At one point, temperature screening was considered exactly that, right? You're doing a medical exam on someone, and not everybody's authorized to be able to do that. And they relaxed some of that because of the pandemic.
Yeah, the EOC came out with that guidance that Dave's referring to. With basically, they've determined the pandemic's a direct threat, and so that's why you're able to ask those questions that normally the ADA would keep you from asking. You know, we've had a lot of people call with, you know, people who don't want to come to work. So, you know, it's different if they're a vulnerable individual. You probably all saw that in the public health order, or if they have a disability, so you've got to do an ADA analysis. But if they're just, you know, regular healthy person, but they're telling you, look, I'm just too scared to come to work, you know, you have to go through that work refusal analysis. And if, you know, and at some point, you know, some employers are making the business decision that fine, you can stay home as long as we can get by without you, but you're not getting paid. But other employers saying, look, based on your job, we need you. So if you don't come in, we're going to have to replace you. And effectively, you know, without them coming into work, that's a resignation. That's not a termination. So that has unemployment concerns as well for that individual, because they've resigned their employment. You haven't terminated them, you know. So, you know, obviously unemployment does what unemployment does, but that can be an issue for them with unemployment. So, you know, there is a, you know, I always recommend if there's a process, if someone doesn't want to come in, you know, document those conversations, find out what other things they need to be, you know, feel safe at work. Maybe the reassuring helps them. We've had some employees that once we've kind of talked through all the safety precautions that are being taken, they've then decided to come in, or once they found out they could lose their job, they decided to come in. But make sure you document that, because work refusal cases can get messy. But, you know, we've heard, I mean, the unemployment, I don't know if you've seen on the unemployment website, they actually have a button now, we call the easy button, where if you've called employees back and they refuse to come, they want you to report that to them. And they have a way to do that, you know, because they're really trying to get people back into work if, you know, you're going back to work. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Pat, it sounds like you're on the right track in handling it. But yeah, I'd say, you know, we get a few of those questions from different employers every day. So there's a lot of people dealing with that issue.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's the ADA thing that got kicked in. And the statement was that under ADA, at least from the attorneys that were our HR people were talking to, that some of the responses on our questionnaires are in conflict with the ADA, even self-identifying as a vulnerable person or a, you know, particularly threatened group, that put us in conflict with ADA. And HIPAA.
Those are crazy dilemmas that hopefully some of these resources can help on. I don't know if it transitions well, but it makes me think of the other questions that were on the sheet about if someone does get sick and gets the illness from work, is that a workers' comp issue? Where does that go from? I don't know if we have any of our, I saw some insurance people jump on there. And I don't know where they went to, but does anyone know that answer? Like if you went to work and then you actually got it and sick, or is there anything different?
What I saw was that it was a pretty high bar to demonstrate that your work is what got you infected for the for COVID-19, because it is a pandemic and it's so prevalent in the everywhere. But that, I mean, that said, somebody's going to make the case, and somebody will argue that.
Yeah, I don't think there's denying that someone's going to say that I've been in a bubble ever since, and there's no way, no how that it was anywhere else but work. But let those kind of play out. I'm trying to remember the other question, just kind of, is there any special insurance, I guess, that anyone needs to ramp up or do anything different with their insurance? I see head shaking, nose.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I haven't seen where, you know, I haven't gotten any indication from our comp carrier that we need to up our comp, right? But I don't know that you really do. That just covers the injury and go from there. I do know that OSHA would consider it a recordable, or originally they had some pretty good language around it, and then they relaxed it a little bit, where it's not, originally it was not considered like the flu. I don't think they're considering it like the flu currently, but there's still some, like Pat said, they've changed the verbiage a little bit to make it, the bar a little harder to prove, I guess.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Going back, I'm reading the questions again. One of them was time management for you all, and the fact that you're on here is fabulous for your time management to get that. But some of these are just, how do you catch up or conduct training when you're limited by social distancing, so you can't get the big groups together? And then how do you prioritize just what was regular work and now like COVID work on top of it? Does anyone have any great time management tips or prioritizing things on how to get everyone informed and trained?
Hey, Lori.
Yeah.
It's Tammy. We're moving over to a WebEx platform for training. The only training we won't be able to do right now is skills requirements. So things like first aid, we can't do. But everything else, we're moving over to WebEx.
So how many does that mean that you're, I mean, do they do it, is it a recorded that you're doing on their own time, or are you doing some group ones?
We've done one group one live, and then we're working with the media section in the city to start recording some of those that we're teaching live so that they can watch them at their own time or when it's convenient, especially since our crews are all staggered right now. So we can't get anybody in on one specific time. So we're moving that way. I kind of feel like the city is a little bit behind on going virtual, but it is what it is. At least we're moving in that direction. But the WebEx platform has worked really well. You can use the chat to ask questions or answer questions, and you, just like Zoom, you see all the little pictures of everybody that's in attendance. So and that's how we've been taking attendance. We're working with IT right now to see if we can't add that join the meeting link into where they register on our LMS system. So they only have to go one place instead of 2 or 3 to get into class.
Troy chimed in the chat room, Troy Bridges, that they've been doing a lot of virtual site safety with FaceTime or Microsoft Teams. And that the foreman superintendent walks around with the job. Okay, so he's got his person on the site that walks him around on the phone. That's great. And to conduct virtual visits without going out and about. So that's another creative way of using it for sure. I know someone contacted me from Washington, D.C. or somewhere that we did he was doing an OSHA 30 online, and that noticed that when he was doing it, he wasn't just taking the screenshots of people, and people actually had to hold up their identification, state their name, and make sure then that there was a screenshot of someone with their ID and training. I don't know how relevant or if that was required or not. That was just something that I saw as an extra step for stuff like that can be helpful. I know for our rock tape classes that have all gone virtual, that in order for people to get their CEUs properly, that there needs to be some sort of a quiz administered and then brought back. So I'm sure, I don't know how all your regulations work on those sorts of things, but that's what we've been doing on our end, is to add the quiz for retention and not just time spent on screen. Anyone else?
We've been using, our WebNet training platform for a lot of the safety training. And then our parent company has got this really nice program for all sorts of training, so that I have a lot of records about what people are doing, and able to put that into the system is giving them credit and getting the company credit for getting people into the training.
Yeah, that's a big one. Linda, just go ahead.
No, you were going to talk to Linda. Go ahead.
I just saw it in the chat that she attended a Red Rocks training on Zoom, and that you weren't going to get credit if you didn't show yourself, which to me makes a lot of sense, because, you know, who knows what's going on the other side. I can just mute my camera and then go upstairs for a while, right? And then to say that gives you credit, I totally agree on that one. So, Matt, what were you going to say?
What I've done, and Tammy over at the city of Aurora has been kind of the beneficiary of this whole thing. We have an LMS system for people who are recertifying their on-track safety training. It's almost at a primary teaching tool, not quite there. But what I did is I put my presentation into a PDF. I send it off to folks. They sit there, go through, review the document, give me the quiz back, and that way I can keep municipalities, vendors, contractors continuing on with their recertification process, training new folks, and keeping them out there doing work around our system.
Lori, it's Tammy again.
Mm-hmm.
So we have taken advantage of Matt's platform, and we've been doing it for about 2 years. So Matt's platform has worked really well, and we've been able to create an event and session in our LMS. So the guys sign up for the class through the LMS, take the class, Matt confirms that they passed it, and then we complete the class in our learning management system. I took an 8-hour train the trainer on trench and excavation hazard identification through Rocky Mountain Education Center, and they did it on WebEx, and they had 2 instructors. So one instructor was speaking while the other instructor was keeping an eye on who was on the training session. And then what he also did was, when the instructor asked a question, he confirmed that everybody had a response either in the chat or by waving or thumbs up or whatever the request was from the instructor. So that's 2 different ways to confirm whether people are actually sitting there paying attention to the training, or like you said, turning it on and walking away.
No, I think those are all good ways to still conduct training that's going on. Is there any priority difficulties with anyone as far as, you know, do you feel like you're catching up on all your standard to-do lists because you're always doing COVID to-do lists? I see nods.
No, I'm not catching up.
Yeah, no, yeah. Catching up is its own relative term.
I'm
Right?
working way more hours than I ever have before.
Yeah, I think
saying
as
this is the
yeah.
first time in our whole careers that the H part of the HSE has been as important.
But it's not the safety professionals' health they worry about.
No, no. Well, and I think that's one thing, I guess, and I've heard it from some of my clients as well, that, you know, I've been graciously working from home for a long time, and knowing that you definitely do have to, you've got to set boundaries of hours if you can. I know everyone's going to, you know, be on demand all the time. I think that's the downfall of having all these virtual meetings and things like that. I think people feel like they have to be on demand. If you're being asked the question, then you need to just jump right back, and or whatever to-do list that you're being given. That was one of my advices for lots of people. One of my clients for a multiple distribution center, he's like, I think I've had most of my meals in front of my computer for the past week or two or something like that.
I apologize, because that's what I was doing, was eating my lunch, because
no, this is lunch. This is meant to be a lunch. He was doing breakfast.
Like people
and
forget to respect
everything.
that, like lunch hour, and that there's actually a quitting time now, and that we don't start at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Hours are all
Yes,
over the place.
but the phone call started 4, so.
Yeah, well, I am even getting email. I'm not getting up and answering them, but I am getting emails at like 3:30 and 4 o'clock because our shifts are staggered now. It's like, just because you're working doesn't mean I am.
No,
that's where that do not bother me function on iPhones works really nice.
I don't know if y'all experience this or if it's more local to our culture here, but the email volume probably went up 10x.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Which makes all sorts of other problems happen. I think it's definitely something to address. And I think, Dave, maybe you and I were talking about that on, does everyone, you know, I'm more of the health in the HSC, of course, but kind of figuring out, does everyone still have someone that can help and talk about mental health? Do you have sort of fact sheets that you can give out and say, you know, returning to work, if you're afraid of it, if you're not afraid of it, just knowing that the changes in the mental health is a big part of everything. You know, does anyone, where are people getting those resources, I guess is what I would say. Is it something you already have on mental health stuff, or are you putting something out special for getting people back to work and back in a different rhythm?
For us, we're kind of, you know, starting to point towards our, what is it, EAP kind of team.
Same here.
And reaching out to them, or, you know, at least letting folks know it's available and it's a resource for them to reach out to.
What I've seen is that a lot of people, especially us, you know, like the people doing this, we're, you know, happy, well taken care of people in our homes and working from here. It's hard for me to complain when I see what a lot of other people are doing. And yet there's a lot of stress going on right now for everybody.
Yeah, I think I think it's good to just mention that the EAP is a resource for sure, and just have everybody acknowledge that stress is normal, common. It's something that you can use to a benefit. I guess that was one of the things that changed my mindset a lot on stress, was not that we all need to be stress-free, but that use your stress to make you more productive, make you do more self-care, you know, like use it as a catalyst, not just fear of it, so to speak. And so that's my little public service announcement of the day. And get out and about and make happy hour whenever you want.
So does the ride on the crazy train apply?
That's exactly right. Yeah, Tammy just saw my email. It was one that that people need to understand that it's normal. And I'm just talking, you all can butt in on me at any time, but for physical workers that haven't been doing their full physical job, that, you know, it's either been less productivity because of all the regulations, or like one of my clients has been alternating week on, week off, something like that, super important to have them physically know that their body's not going to be used to what they're going back to, and the added stress. It's not just a change in the physical thing, but your mental health and your psychological factors will also be contributing to that. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm a resource for anyone who's got people coming back that are all of a sudden you're getting lots of complaints of sprains or strains or things like that. So just know that that probably will happen, and education on that is a big deal on this end of things. I'm going to go back to my document and see if I got most of the questions.
Does it seem to the rest of us while she's looking that we're locked? You're expected to multitask now. I'm sitting at my table with the wine rack behind me, by the way, but I have 3 screens going and my phone right next to me, and that constant level of input from a machine. I had people coming into my office before, and that's okay because I would talk to them. You know, we'd work, but then you'd have 2 minutes of talking to a person. Now it's just this screen, that screen, that screen, this phone. That's a challenge.
I think that's what's creating the most stress for me is there's a lot more layers to how to get your job done than just face-to-face interaction or answering an email or phone call. Now you've got meeting requests and team meetings and team calls, and there's still the few people, because I'm back part-time in the office and then part-time at home. So then I get an influx of people in my office when I'm there. And it's like, okay, you have to stay at the door. Don't come any closer because then we violate the 6-foot rule. And it's stressful to balance all of those different balls right now.
I think that's something Matt Cross just jumped in on the chat on self-care is critical right now, and it takes deliberate action on your part to just step away. It's not easy, but it's a must. And what do you do, right? Tammy, do you carry a stick around with you at the office? And, you know, can't you use the broomstick and just poke them away?
No, I don't do that. They're really good about standing at the door, and we all wear masks when we're in the office. So anytime we step out of our private office, we have a mask on. It's just a lot of balls. And I'm used to so many, but now we've added a few more. And I haven't learned quite how to juggle all the rest of the new stuff.
That sounds like a common complaint for sure. I mean, I know I live by my written to-do list every day and just a little spiral notebook. I don't know if anyone has like the perfect answer to time management on how to check off everything on your to-do list. If you have it, I'd like it.
Me too. And I wasn't shushing you, Lori. My puppy is barking at garbage guy.
No worries. I got one of those upstairs.
If you don't finish it today, it'll still be there tomorrow. And that's kind of where I had to get to. The way we operate within our safety division here at RTD, we're expected to be on call, if you will, in case we have to go out for something 24/7. With that being said, I don't check my email. I got to the point where business day's over, I put that thing away. And unless I have to break it out for doing a report because of an accident, I don't open it. And that's during the weekday. On the weekend, I don't even open it anymore. I do my projects. I actually finished a personal project during the COVID shutdown that my grandfather started some 75 years ago, building benches. And I finally finished it. That's what I did. That's why I meant it takes deliberate action on your part to step away from this thing, because if you don't do it, it's going to eat you up.
Yeah,
I'd agree on that. Yeah, and I think it's something to where this is a time where you don't want your coworkers or your supervisors or anyone that you work with to realize you have no boundaries, right? So just the communication of, you know, yes, the phone might be ringing at 4 a.m. Don't answer it, but also be like, hey, I'm doing my best to keep my office hours in this time. If it's really an emergency, then, you know, make that known. So on how you're communicating, where your boundaries are, because definitely you're going to burn out in no time if you're just constantly responding to anything at any time.
I think our company should get together and send all of their safety people, meaning us, to a really nice resort for a month after all of this is over with.
Nice idea. Definitely. Someone start the GoFundMe page for that one.
The only thing is they're going to have to certify that it's been pre-cleaned and that we all have masks that match our outfits for the whole time we're there.
Certainly, for sure. Troy Bridges put a link in the chat about some good webinars on mental health and wellness stuff. So make sure you can use that as a resource as well. I know we're kind of winding in on the end of things. I love that most of you hung out for the majority of the time. What we really want to do as a chapter is just try to make resources available for everyone and really make your lives easier or as easy as we can by filtering resources, because that's usually what you all have different specializations and things that you're great at. So this is a time to share those. And if you have anything that you've made up that you love and is a really good resource, you can email it to me. You can post it on our group Facebook page or the LinkedIn or anything like that. It's definitely, I hear from lots of professionals that it's a huge value for people to share what's working and like what, you know, challenge that it solved by having this resource sheet to just give people to read. I think Kristen's Q&A page is going to be a huge value as well. So please at any time, send me things. I also kind of want to send an email out to the chapter people of letting people know if you're at a hurdle and you just don't quite have the resources, or you just have a question, you know, email it back. I know the WISE group on Facebook is huge. And if you just look up Women in Safety Excellence, they are a great resource on quick questions for that. So multiple hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 or something in that group. So if anyone, I know I've gone there for just quick questions and people get right back to you in this land of on-demand stuff. So if you've got secrets, share them. This is the time. It turns out to help in the long run. I know a lot of people are also losing jobs. I'm hearing that as well. So, which sucks, you know, oil and gas especially is having its own wave, but across some industries as well. So, so you all know we're revamping our job seekers page on our website a little bit, just to make it a little more organized, user-friendly if you are looking for people or if you're looking for a job.